Hello and welcome back to our next IVF webinar tonight. It's good to be back and it's good to have you back, Andrea. Hi, and how are you feeling tonight?
Thank you so much for having me again. I'm feeling great. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here today. It's such a great opportunity, and especially to talk about such an important topic that I'm sure so many patients have been feeling recently.
Yes, definitely. That is the truth. So, huge thanks for joining us again. And of course, I just want to remind everyone that Andreia Trigo, she is actually also our ambassador and partner. She's supporting Strong Get Together events from the very beginning. So, huge thanks for that. You can see all other ambassadors and partners right here on the screen. So I would like to thank Andrea for that as well. Yes, so not only for presenting for your for your help with that topic and so your tips, those are always useful, but also for supporting our initiative. And well, tonight Andrea will talk about stress, anxiety, fear, and anger. So all those emotions that I'm sure many of you, if not all, feel recently because of what's going on. So as always, Andrea will start with her presentation, and then it will be time for your questions. So all you need to do is just simply type those questions in the chat section, and she will be happy to help you out as much as she can. I know this for sure. So go ahead and do it. And of course, please let us know that you can hear us loud and clear. We want to make sure that you do, so that we can go ahead with your presentation. Andrea, always a pleasure. Are you ready to begin with the presentation?
I'm ready. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you as well. Go ahead.
So, today we're going to talk about stress, anxiety, anger, and fear. And I think probably all of you who have been trying to conceive have felt this, if not all of them, at least some of these feelings at some point in your journey. And especially today that we are facing these very specific circumstances of the COVID-19 crisis, many of us are navigating the fear, the uncertainty, and the change. We are being asked to change and adapt very quickly to circumstances, maybe circumstances around jobs and the uncertainty of our income streams, maybe about being home all the time, or maybe even about working remotely or having our treatment stopped. So it's not really unsurprising that people are feeling a bit more stressed, anxious, angry, or fearful. So today, this is a very important topic. And what we're going to discuss today is some of the strategies that you can use to manage these fabulous four emotions. For those of you who don't know me, I would like just to do a short presentation about myself. I was diagnosed with infertility at the very young age of 17. And at that stage, I have certainly felt all of those emotions and many more, usually what we call the roller coaster of emotions. But throughout my career, I have become a nurse, and I have made the decision to dedicate myself to people who are struggling with infertility because I managed to cope my emotions rather well. And I wanted to give back to people who are in this journey so that they can manage their emotions as well and maybe reach the dream they have of building their families. So today we're going to talk about stress, anxiety, anger, and fear. We're going to talk exactly about what are these emotions, how do they happen in our bodies. We're going to talk about some tips to approach self-care and when you should ask for help. But the first thing I would like to tell you is that if you have felt any of these emotions recently, or even if you are feeling it right now, I want you to know that your response is 100% normal and expected. You are living unprecedented circumstances that mean that your treatment or whatever plan you had for your journey is not being able to go ahead. You have so many aspects that are uncertain in your life right now. So it's normal to be fearful, it's normal to be angry, anxious, or stressed. So don't beat yourself up if you're feeling any of these emotions. And the second thing I would like to tell you is that because you've been in this journey of trying to conceive and you have faced some challenges that most people don't have to face in their lives, you already have some coping mechanisms inside you. And those coping mechanisms have given you some strength from overcoming the things that once you thought you couldn't. So these things that you are facing at the moment, all the uncertainty and the need to adapt quickly to change, is something that you can do. So today I'm going to give you some strategies that will allow you to build on top of what you already have. So it's nothing new, but it's something that you can 100% do. So I have here 4 very beautiful pictures of me feeling stressed, anxious, anger, and fear. And I would like to start with the first emotion. I would like to start talking about stress. We've all felt stressed at some point, but I think it can be quite difficult for people to define exactly what is stress. So stress is your body's response to any change that is requiring you to adjust to your environment. And your body reacts with changes that are physical, mental, and emotional responses. Stress is an absolutely normal part of life, and you can experience stress from your environment, from your body, but sometimes you can even experience stress from your thoughts, the things that go through your head, things that are real, and things that haven't happened yet, things that you might be worried about in the future. Stress can be defined as the degree to which you feel a bit overwhelmed or maybe even unable to cope with the pressures that you have around you or within you. So if we look now at anxiety, we know that stress and anxiety are usually linked together. And anxiety is usually defined as a feeling of unease, and it's your body's natural response to feeling stress. You usually feel the fear or the apprehension about what is about to happen or what might happen in the future. You might be worried or nervous, and you might have some feelings of tension or worry thoughts. You might be worried about something that is happening now, or you might be even worried about the future, things that haven't happened yet. And when it comes to anger, it's a bit different. It has a bit more energy compared to the anxiety. Anger is an emotion that you feel towards something or someone that you feel has deliberately done you wrong. It's absolutely normal. It's a natural response. And sometimes it can come without expecting. Sometimes you may even feel it's a bit irrational. But most of us, all of us, will feel angry at some point in time. And it's a natural way for our bodies to survive and protect ourselves from anything that we consider in our values and beliefs to be wrongdoing towards ourselves. And this fourth emotion is fear. Fear is what we feel when there is a perceived danger or perceived threat towards ourselves. It causes physiological changes and ultimately behavioral changes, because when we are afraid, we behave differently. Fear is usually a response to something that is happening in the present, but just like those other emotions, it can also happen in anticipation of something that might be happening in the future, that may or may not happen in the future, but we might still be afraid. So the reason why I decided to talk about these 4 emotions is because there is something that I usually call the crazy 8. And what happens is that usually you might be, let's say, stressed or fearful about your circumstances. And that's when you decide, I've had enough, I'm not going to take action, I just need to move on and move forward. And then there's a time when you might feel a bit angry and you say, no, I need to do something about it. And then you try to do something about it, and then that cycle doesn't work. And some people continue in this crazy age of feeling stressed, angry, afraid, anxious all the time, one after the other, and not really being able to break the cycle of the crazy age. So what I want to tell you today is that it is possible to break the cycle, and with some of the strategies that we'll talk about today, you can break this cycle and you will be able to go through the normal circumstances that you are going through in a way that your emotions are not as intense and you are a bit more in control of how you are feeling, and you're able to make decisions that are not so based on the intense emotion that makes you act differently because of fear, because of stress, or because of anger. You want decisions that are based on a more balanced response that is not just based on strong emotions. So the first strategy that I want to talk about is that you are not your emotions. And usually we say, I am angry, or I am stressed, or I am anxious. And what I would like to invite you to do is to, instead of saying I am, is to say I feel. Instead of saying I am angry, I say I feel angry. And the moment we change from I am to I feel, we detach our emotions from ourselves, from our identity. And that's the first step to being able to manage something. It's easier to manage something that is not us, that is not our identity. So detaching and saying I feel instead of I am. The second thing I would like to tell you is that all our feelings that we have, either the fear, the anger, the anxiety, the stress, or even the good feelings, the happiness, the hope, all of those feelings are triggered by certain thoughts that we have in our head. So whatever we think about the circumstances that are happening around us, that leads to the feelings that we have, the emotions. And because I feel a certain way, I will take a certain action. And the actions I take will give me the results I have in life. So if I have a certain thought about, for example, coronavirus, or about my fertility, and I have a feeling of being fearful, afraid, I might not be willing to take certain actions. I might, for example, be less likely to take risk. And that means that I will get results that are a result of that action. However, if I'm angry, for example, I will take very different actions to the actions I take if I'm afraid, or to the actions I take if I am happy or if I'm hopeful. So it's really important that we understand there is a link between our thoughts, our feelings, our actions, and our results. So the second thing I would like to invite you to do today is to analyze and look at the thoughts that you're having whenever you have these emotions. If you are feeling anxious, what is the thought that is triggering that anxiety? If you're feeling angry, what is the thought that is triggering that feeling of being angry, of being fearful, or of being stressful? So looking at the thoughts is a great way of addressing that feeling. And you might notice that even though you are analyzing the thought, and sometimes you just can't prevent that feeling from coming, it's almost like you can't prevent it. However, it's important that we catch those emotions as soon as they come. The sooner we get them, the easiest it will be to manage them. I would like you to think about, for example, being in pain. And if you are in pain on a scale of 0 to 10, let's say you are a 3 or a 4 in pain, you can take paracetamol or ibuprofen, and that may take your pain away. However, if you don't take any painkillers and you let your pain develop to a level 8, 9 out of 10, that's a very severe pain. If you take paracetamol or ibuprofen at that point, your pain is not as easy to manage. So it's not likely that you'll be able to bring it down. So my idea is that we need to catch our emotions when they are just coming to us. So when they are at that lowest level, they're not still set in our brains, because the longest we leave our emotions here or here, the more difficult we will have to manage them. So I would like to invite you to think about common triggers that usually we know can trigger the fear, the anger, the anxiety, or the stress. And one of the most common triggers we have is when our basic human needs are not met. How many of you have felt angry when you haven't eaten for a while? My husband will tell me that that is correct, because he knows I get angry when I haven't eaten for a while. So when you don't have your basic human needs met, you are more likely to be angry or to be stressed or to be anxious. When you have situations that are uncertain, new, or unpredictable, you will also feel stressed and anxious and fearful. So that might be, for example, for those of you who have infertility and who are trying to conceive using medical approaches, you know that IVF is uncertain. You know that it's something new to you, that you haven't had previous experience with it. And you know it's a bit unpredictable. You don't know what's going to come out of it, if you will have a baby or not. So the whole situation that you're facing in terms of fertility is uncertain, new, and unpredictable. So it's a perfect sauce to cause all of these emotions that we're talking about today. And if we think about the pandemic that all of us are going through, it's also uncertain, new, and unpredictable. So it's, again, just to top up all the emotions that we already have for our normal circumstances, it just enhances it a bit further. We know that loss and grief are also common triggers for all of these emotions. And when we go through infertility, we are constantly having this feeling of loss. We have a loss for not having children the normal and natural way that we thought we would. And so many times we have loss after loss when you go through a cycle that doesn't work, and then you try again, and then there's another loss. When you experience miscarriages, or even when you have to try, for example, egg donation or adoption, every time you need to change your plan and adjust your plan, you need to grieve the loss of something that didn't happen the way you thought it would happen. And we know that this is a common trigger for all of these emotions. We know that situations that cause injustice, criticism, or threat are also triggers for these emotions. And so many times have we not felt injustice because of the fertility problems that we have, because of not being understood by other people who are not going through it, or even the way fertility treatment in different countries is distributed, and so many people don't have access to it. So it can be very, very unjust. And we know that when we have our values and beliefs challenged, when we don't see eye to eye with other people, then we're also more likely to feel anxious, angry, or fearful, or stressed. So if you know that these are triggers, and you know that you might be feeling these emotions, you are more likely to be able to catch these emotions if you know that you are facing these situations. And let's say you are starting to feel, let's say a bit anxious or fearful. And you have this image of the four photos of me that I took with all these emotions. And I would like to talk to you about the four molders of these emotions. Molders are things that allow us to adjust the intensity of the emotion. And all emotions have three molders, which are the focus, the language, and the posture. If you think about a time when you were afraid, or when you were anxious, or angry, or stressed, I want you to think about the posture of your body. How did your body look like? So you might remember that in the picture where I was afraid, I had this body posture. Or stressed, I was grabbing my head. So all of these body postures, they are universal, and everyone here or in different countries, in different cultures, will show similar postures to each of these emotions. It might be that even if someone is a couple of meters away from you and you see them with a certain posture, you can easily say if they are sad, happy, fearful, or angry, even without talking to them. So posture is a big molder and gives meaning to each emotion that we are feeling. The second one that I would like to talk about is the language that we are using towards ourselves when we are feeling these emotions. So if you are fearful, or anxious, you might be using certain language that is not very friendly towards yourself. You might say, for example, you are not good enough, or there's no point even trying, or why does this always happens to you, or you're never able to do anything else. How many of you have had that sort of language towards yourself? We've all been there. So again, when you are feeling fearful, you have a certain language that you use in your head. When you're feeling angry, you have a certain language. When you're feeling anxious or stressed, you are using a certain language towards yourself. And the third molder of meaning that we give to emotions is focus. If you are angry, there is something that you are focusing on. If you are stressed, there is a particular circumstance or person, something that happens that you are focusing on. If you are afraid, you are focusing on something. So, and I tell you this because just like we have these three molders of meaning to these emotions that we're talking about today, if you think about a situation when you were happy, you will very easily see that you can also have a specific posture, language, and focus for that time when you were happy. So one of the things that you can use to see, to grasp these emotions as soon as they start, is by noticing where your focus, your language, and your posture look like. So I might not even notice that I'm stressed, but I might notice that my muscles are tensed, or that I have aches and pains in my body, or that my focus is on something, or that I'm using certain language towards myself, or that I'm a bit restless or unable to relax. So those are certain things that might help me identify these emotions very quickly and be able to grasp them and grab them so I can take hold of them instead of letting them take hold of me. So I have here some of the things that you might be feeling. So shallow breathing, increased heart rate, feeling sweaty, shaking, difficult concentrating, difficulty sleeping, feeling very easily fatigued or tired, cravings for tobacco, sugar, alcohol, and persistent focus on a certain event, person, or circumstance. Ruminating thoughts, which is when you're always thinking about the same thing, and then negative language towards ourselves. So if you're noticing any of these physical or mental psychological signs, then it's likely that you are feeling one of these emotions. And what you can do next is try to identify, what emotion am I feeling? Which takes me to the next step. So the next step is just to say, okay, it's okay to feel the way I feel. I know I'm not feeling okay, but it's okay. So you are being a bit compassionate towards yourself. You're acknowledging that you are human, and this emotion that you are feeling right now is just one of many emotions that you as a human being are able to experience. So we have here this wheel, which I'm going to explain a bit. It's called the Wheel of Emotions, and it was created by Robert Plutchik, and it helps us identify the emotions that we are feeling. So if you're feeling all these things in your body, one of the things that you can do is grab this wheel of emotions. We know that as human beings, do you know how many emotions we are able to feel? It's over 34,000 emotions. So that is a lot. But Robert said that there is about 8 basic emotions, and they are here in this wheel. So you have here basic emotions. Number 8 are joy, trust, fear, surprise, sadness, disgust, anger, and anticipation. So you have these emotions here, and you will notice that they have different colors. And let's look at the color closer to the center. The color is a bit more brighter, and towards the outside of the wheel, it's not as bright. So that has to do with the intensity of the emotion. So if we look at here, joy, for example, if you feel joy at a very high level, very intense level, you can call it ecstasy. But if you feel it at a lower level, you can define it as serenity. For example, if you have here anger, which we're talking about today, at the lowest level is just a bit of an annoyance that you have. But if it's a bit more intense, you call it rage. So there is an intensity that you can see of each emotion. So you can identify your emotion, and you can identify how intense that emotion is. Another interesting thing about this wheel is that we have opposites. So, for example, you have here joy is the opposite of sadness, and they are immediately positioned in front of each other. So joy is the opposite of sadness, and disgust is the opposite of trust. Anger is the opposite of fear. So it's quite useful to understand what you are feeling, because so many people have difficulty in labeling what they are feeling. So when you look at this wheel, it makes it a bit more easier. The last thing I'd like to tell you about this wheel is that there is some emotions that are here in white in between the petals, and they are the combination of the emotions on each side. So for example, if you see here love on the top is the combination of joy and trust. If you see here, for example, optimism is the combination of joy and anticipation. So this wheel is about trying to pinpoint what is happening with you. So let's say you are noticing that thought, or you're noticing that trigger, or maybe you are at the stage where you're noticing something in your system, in your body that isn't right. You grab the wheel and you try to identify in the wheel what emotion, what feeling it is. The next thing that you're going to do is you're going to ask yourself, is this emotion healthy or unhealthy? Is this something, is this emotion the way I want to respond to my circumstances? Or maybe can I respond in a different way? And is there any other way that I can choose to respond to the circumstance that is a bit more useful to me? So if what is happening around me is making me feel fearful or angry, is this the way that I want to respond? Am I going to get what I want by being angry? Am I getting what I want by being fearful or by being anxious? So these are really useful questions to ask yourself. So the last part that I want to talk to you about, once you try and make these answering these questions yourself, is to write down your thoughts. Because all of these things all these exercises are a bit challenging. We don't do it naturally, but it's something that you can try doing at home for sure. So writing it down is a way of helping take these emotions again away from us, from our identity onto paper. And once they are on paper, they are more easier to manage. And once they are on paper, you can also try and respond towards yourself and your circumstances with a bit more compassion. So I have here an example, for example, going to the supermarket. This is a situation that made me feel a bit stressed and anxious, fearful that I'm going to get the virus, or angry that other people are not following the restrictions and they're not staying 2 meters away from me, for example. So the situation was going to the supermarket. That is the trigger for me. I felt stressed, anxious, angry, and fearful. And my automatic thought that pops in my head is that I'm going to get infected with coronavirus, and then I'm going to get everyone in my household infected, and we're all going to die. So that's my thought. And once I write it on paper, what I can do is write a compassionate response to what I'm going through. And what I've written here is it's normal to be worried about getting an infection. It's okay to be concerned about my well-being, but I'm taking all the steps I can to minimize the risk. So I'm washing hands, I'm wearing a mask, I'm keeping the social distance, and I'm disinfecting all my purchases. So I'm allowing myself to feel the way I feel, and I'm reassuring myself that I'm doing everything that I can possibly do so that I can lower the intensity of these emotions. We can think about another example. Let's say you are feeling stressed or fearful for your fertility journey because you haven't been able to go ahead with treatment yet. So the situation is you not being able to go ahead with your embryo transfer or with your stimulated cycle, for example. And you're feeling stress and you're feeling fearful and you're angry at all of this. And your automatic thought is, I'm never going to get pregnant. And your compassionate response might be, it's normal to be worried, concerned about not being able to get pregnant straight away. It's absolutely okay to feel the way you feel. However, you're taking all the steps you can during this lockdown period to look after your fertility. For example, you're eating healthier, you're exercising, you're here listening to these podcasts regularly to keep updated. So it's all about inviting a compassionate response towards yourself instead of just being so harsh about yourself. And this will allow you to reduce the intensity of stress, anxiety, anger, and fear. Now, I want to say that even if you do all of these things, sometimes you might still need help managing these emotions, and it's completely understandable. There's lots of people who do need help. So when should you ask for help? You should ask for help if you feel that you're not being able to manage stress anxiety, anger, or fear. If you are feeling a bit more disconnected from yourself, from others, from your work, from your environment. If you are feeling a bit emotionally exhausted, like you have nothing left to give. If you're feeling you can't have activities that give you any accomplishment or pleasure, or if any of these four emotions are paralyzing you and keeping you from achieving the things that you want to achieve in life, that's when you need to ask for help. So, this is what I wanted to share with you today, but I'm more than happy to answer any questions you might have, either here or afterwards. So, if you have any questions, now is the time for them. And if anyone
Excellent.
needs individual support, I'm also happy to give any individual support that might be needed afterwards.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your presentation, Andreia, and your tips. Definitely something that we can all use. Definitely something that we definitely should use,
Yes.
even because those are the things that we are. All of us have been having troubles with, I'm sure. So, thank you so much
Mhm.
for that again. And yes, it is now time for the questions. The only thing is, Andreia, unfortunately, we have a bit of a technical issue. Okay, I am not able to show the questions on
Okay.
the screen like we always do, but you do see them in the chat
Yes,
section,
I
right?
can see. I can
Exactly.
see
So
them
we
here.
so we
Yes.
will simply need to do it this way, but
Yeah.
of course that won't be a problem. So you can write all of your questions in the chat, and of course Andreia will be helping you out a bit. So let's go ahead
Yeah.
with this. The
Yes, I
first
can see your Taj is the first question, isn't it?
Yes, I will read it out for everyone, of course, okay? And you can answer, okay?
Brilliant.
Perfect, thank you.
Tell
My
me.
donor egg transplant has been delayed due to COVID-19. It's so frustrating because the clinic is not staying in touch. I have to keep chasing them. I am based in the UK. The clinic is in Spain. Any advice you can provide?
Yeah, so it's completely understandable that you feel frustrated at this time. Usually, when we are facing a crisis, what we expect of clinics and governments is to over communicate. That's what I have been telling all the clinics. You need to over communicate through social media. You need to call patients, you need to email patients, because that's what people expect when it's a crisis. People expect you to show them that you have a plan and that everything is under control, and that you're giving them hope that they can go ahead. But unfortunately, I know that a lot of clinics are still not doing that. So the best thing that I could say is to continue chasing them, and calling them, because if they're not calling you, that's the only way of you getting an answer, is by getting in touch with them. But in terms of managing your emotions, I think you can also, for example, try and keep track of the changes that are happening around Spain and around UK, what travel restrictions are in place, and when clinics might be open. So there might be ways of being aware of that through the news or through social media, or by being in touch with other patients that are in that clinic, or maybe even following the clinics on social media. Some of them are sharing some of the news about being closed or open, or running other webinars like this one. So it might be a way of getting in touch with them. I would say that to manage your frustration, the best thing would be try and keep busy and try and schedule a time to look into these topics, because otherwise it can consume all your time and all your worry, if you are so focused on this topic. So if you allow yourself, for example, half an hour a day, at the end of the day, to look into it, and go on social media, check the clinic, email the clinic, or try and call them. Just do everything you need to do in that half an hour, but then allow yourself the rest of the time to engage in other activities and other things that do allow you to continue having a life outside of these restrictions.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Andrea, for that. I mean, fingers crossed you will be able to get, they will get back to you. But as Andrea said, definitely you need to chase them. They should be the ones to update you. So best of luck. Okay. Thank you
Yes.
so much. And next question you can see, do you think that prescription drugs for anxiety have an effect on fertility? I take citalopram.
Citalopram. Yeah, so unfortunately, these drugs do have an effect on fertility. It's well known. But I mean, if you have been taking them for a long time, and if you talk to your general practitioner or if you have a fertility doctor, do tell them that you are taking these drugs. But these are one of the drugs that do tend to affect fertility. They affect usually libido, and some anti-psychiatric drugs like SSRIs can also affect the quality of sperm. So I would definitely say to speak with your general practitioner or a fertility doctor if you are taking those medications to see if it's a possible reason for why you haven't gotten pregnant yet.
Okay, excellent. Thank you again for that advice. And someone is typing, so let's. Okay, but oh, sorry. The question is: would you recommend 1 milligram of melatonin before going to bed daily for better sleep and lessen stress?
I don't think you need it. So when we look at the evidence behind supplements, there is very little effect that is seen by supplements apart from folic acid, and there's mixed research on vitamin D. So the most important thing for you to have a good sleep is to make sure that you allow yourself a calming period before bed. So if you have dinner and allow at least 2 or 3 hours between dinner and going to bed, and before going to bed, that last hour, you have a cooling down period. You can maybe do a bit of relaxing yoga, or you can do a bit of reading, but you start toning down the lights. We don't want artificial lights. We don't want your phone near your bed. You can do a bit of mindfulness and meditation, and that will allow you to have a good sleep. Sleep is actually really important for fertility, but you can achieve good melatonin levels by making these lifestyle and environment changes instead of just taking it more supplements.
Excellent. Thank you so much once again for that. And as you can see, but it does not affect the egg. I believe it was about the previous question.
The citalopram.
Yes, I believe so. But yeah,
So
exactly.
I think the biggest thing about citalopram is about the libido. So you're not as likely to want to have sex and intercourse if you're taking it. But there are other medications, antipsychiatric medications that are stronger that may affect the egg, particularly SSRIs. So I would take like a list of the medications that you take. You can send it to me if you want to, but if you have a fertility doctor, you can show it to your fertility doctor and he can tell you exactly if it does affect, and he can change them to maybe more fertility friendly medications during that time.
Okay, excellent. Again, thank you so much. Next one is right here. Is magnesium good for stress?
Yeah, it's again the same situation with supplements. There isn't any high, strong evidence saying that supplementing your diet with magnesium is needed or has any effect. I think the most important thing to manage stress would be trying to manage the thoughts. Remember, we said that the thought leads to the feeling, and the feeling leads to the action and the result. So, trying to have a bit of identifying the thoughts, managing the environment around you, reducing the stressful triggers around you, doing a bit of mindfulness or meditation, trying not to have a list of to-do things that is too big. I've done that myself over the years. I was just adding 5, 6, 7 things to do during my day, and it was impossible to do them. So are the things that I'm giving myself to do realistic? Am I really able to do them, everything that I want to do? But then there's also other situations where you're facing stress that you cannot really relieve the trigger. So I'm not quite sure what your circumstances are in particular, Tej, but um, there's people who are suffering from chronic stress related, for example, to family situations, having to take care of family members who are not unwell, for example, or being in job positions where it's very, very stressful, very demanding. So it depends really if it's stress that you're feeling in one moment or stress that has been continuing for a long time. But the best way to manage stress is to remove the trigger or reduce the trigger and not take supplements to be able to cope. If you're feeling stressed, your body is telling you that something isn't quite right. So it's all about listening to your body and adjusting what isn't right instead of just taking something to try and hide it or manage it somehow.
Okay, perfect. So just like one step, one thing at a time is the best way, right? Okay, thank you so much. Okay, and there's another question. So I don't take any medication, but my anxiety levels have always been high. I don't think I really control it, even when I believe I do. For instance, during the 2 weeks wait after embryo transfer, can the high levels of stress really affect the outcome?
Mm. So that's a good question. There's evidence, a lot of studies around fertility and stress, and is there a link? So what we tend to believe at the moment is stress does not cause infertility, but infertility does cause stress. So if you have been trying for a long time, I'm not surprised that you're feeling anxious or stressed a lot of the time. So that's what we know. And we know that if you're feeling stressed, you are less likely to have intercourse, for example, so you're less likely to get pregnant. So that's what research has shown us. Now, in terms of the 2 week wait, if you're feeling stressed, we need to think about, if I'm feeling stressed, what actions am I taking? Because that will give you the results that you're getting. So if you're feeling stressed, but you're finding a way of still coping with your day to day, and you're doing the things you want to do, then it won't affect your results. But if you're feeling stressed and you're taking actions that might somehow affect the treatment that you've just had, then it can affect. But in terms of research, what we know is that the level of stress does not affect the fertility outcome, but the outcome can give you stress. I would say that if you want, we can schedule a free consultation and we can talk about some of the strategies around anxiety and stress. And we can do a small assessment to see if that's something that you can implement in your day-to-day life, or if you do need some medication, because some people will eventually need medication. But I would say you need an assessment initially, and then we can talk about eventually needing medication or being able to manage it with some behavioral strategies.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for that as well. And as you can see, you can get in touch
Mm,
with Andrea, and I'm sure she will be able to help you in more details, of course, and will be able to just help you with some personal consultation, as you mentioned, right? Perfect.
yes,
Thank you so much.
definitely.
And as you can see, there's
Yeah.
a thank you, Andrea. You are a star. And the question right here is another about the stress. Like, so does stress affect a quality and number of AFC?
And antral follicle count.
Yes.
And no, it does not affect, research doesn't show that stress affects egg quality or the end follicle count. Okay? What we know is that if you are being followed in a fertility clinic and you are aware that your egg count is low or that your egg quality is low, then you might feel stressed about it. But stress does not make you infertile. We know that if you're stressed, you are less likely to have sex. So let's say you go to the doctor and you know that you have poor quality or less eggs, and that makes you feel stressed, and then you're less likely to have sex. So that's like a vicious circle. Stress does not cause infertility, but infertility may make you um, stressed. The biggest factors on egg quality and egg count is age. So for women, fertility starts worsening from the age of 35. So we know that our egg quality and the number of our eggs starts reducing from that age. And after age 40, it becomes very, very low. The chances of even fertility treatment working over 40 are very, very low. And there's a point when you might need to consider egg donation at that point. But apart from that, stress or any other mental health problems do not affect the quality or the number of your eggs.
Okay, thank you so much once again. And it looks like it was our last question. However,
Brilliant.
if you have any left, go ahead and do it. We will be finishing. Therefore, it is like a final call for those questions. But I would already like to thank you, Andrea, for again joining us over and over again. And I know we have another webinar coming very, very soon. So I'm really
Yes.
excited to announce it that it's going to be next month, I believe, right? So
Yes, we
you
have
are our
something coming up
frequent
soon.
presenter, and we are definitely happy about this. So huge thanks for that. And someone is typing. I'm not sure if it's a question or a shout out, but let's give it a minute. Yes, thank you, Andrea. So thank you for.
It's always a pleasure to be here and to be able to help. And it's great to interact with so many people all over the world and being able to help them in some way.
Exactly. That's why we are here. We will be here. So thank you so much to all of you for joining us tonight. And I know that it has been helpful for you. I'm sure of it. So thank you so much. And I would like to let you know that, of course, this has been recorded. So you will have a chance to watch this again if you need it. Of course, it will be uploaded on our website within the next few days, and you can find it on myivfanswers.com. You can find all of our Stronger Together events right there. And if you follow us on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, of course, you will be updated with all those events. As you know, we will be back here tomorrow at 6 p.m. UK time and at 8 p.m. UK time, and we will be here next week and week after that. So stay tuned with all of our events. And Andrea, it's always a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for great advice, for great tips, how to handle all those feelings, because that can be a challenge.
Mm,
So huge
exactly.
thanks, and see you very, very soon. Have a
Very
lovely
soon.
evening.
You
Bye.
too. Bye. Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.